The alarms screaming across Edwards Air Force Base at 0347 hours weren't supposed to happen during peacetime. But as Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez watched 12 unidentified aircraft approaching restricted airspace at Mach 2.5, she realized this wasn't a drill. The base's entire fighter squadron was 2,000 miles away on training exercises. The closest backup was 4 hours out. And the only operational F-22 Raptor on base sat in Hangar 7, supposedly grounded for maintenance. What the base commander didn't know was that the quiet woman in greasy coveralls standing next to that aircraft had logged more combat hours in F-22s than anyone currently stationed at Edwards. They'd dismissed her as just another wrench-turner. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Hydraulic fluid under Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez's fingernails had been there so long it felt permanent. At 29, she moved through Edwards Air Force Base's maintenance hangars like a ghost. 5-foot-4 in steel-toed boots, dark hair pulled back in a regulation ponytail, safety glasses perpetually smudged with fingerprints. Her faded green coveralls bore the patches of aircraft she'd serviced, F-16s, F-35s, and the crown jewel of American air superiority, the F-22 Raptor. Most people at Edwards saw exactly what they expected to see: another maintenance technician. In a sea of blue uniforms, Senior Airman Jake Thompson, fresh out of technical school, had been asking the kinds of questions that made veterans uncomfortable. "Rodriguez, how come you always get assigned to the F-22s?" he asked last Wednesday, watching Maya perform a pre-flight inspection with surgical precision. "I mean, Sergeant Williams has been here longer, and Chun's got more certifications." Maya didn't look up from the fighter's intake sensors, her hands moving with the confidence of someone who knew every rivet and wire by heart. "Experience," she said simply, continuing her methodical check. "But you've only been in maintenance for what, 4 years?" Thompson pressed, genuinely curious rather than challenging. The hangar went quiet. Even Master Sergeant Davis, normally focused on his clipboard and schedules, glanced over with the expression of someone watching a rookie step into quicksand. "Rodriguez knows the Raptor," Davis said carefully, his voice carrying a warning that Thompson was too green to recognize. Leave it at that. What they didn't tell Thompson, what most people on base had forgotten or never knew, was that Maya Rodriguez used to be the stuff of legends. 4 years ago, she wasn't inspecting F-22 Raptors, she was flying them. 137 combat missions over hostile territory. Air-to-air kills that remained classified. She could push the Raptor to performance limits that made engineers nervous, navigate through surface-to-air missile fields like threading a needle, and land on damaged runways that other pilots wouldn't attempt. They called her Phantom because she appeared on enemy radar screens for exactly the time it took to end the engagement. Her squadron patch bore a ghostly F-22 emerging from clouds, and pilots from other units would request transfers just to fly as her wingman. Then came the mission that changed everything. It was supposed to be routine air superiority patrol over Syria. Intelligence had cleared the sector, no enemy aircraft, no surface threats, just a standard show of force flight to remind hostile forces that American air power was always watching. Maya was leading a 4-ship formation of F-22s when the call came through their encrypted communications. "Phantom Lead, this is Command. We have a situation developing. Ground forces are under heavy attack. Coordinates follow. Your sister Elena's unit is pinned down and taking casualties. Emergency. Close air support requested immediately." Maya's younger sister Elena was a combat medic with the 82nd Airborne, deployed to support Special Operations Forces in the same theater. The coordinates placed her unit in a valley surrounded by enemy positions, with hostile reinforcements closing. In the impossible choice, maintain formation and air superiority mission as ordered, or break protocol to provide unauthorized close air support for a ground unit that wasn't part of their mission parameters. Maya chose family. She broke formation without authorization, leading her flight into a low-level attack that saved 37 American soldiers, including her sister. The mission was a tactical masterpiece, precision strikes that eliminated enemy positions without endangering friendly forces. But it was also a direct violation of orders, unauthorized engagement outside their assigned sector, and a breach of command structure that could have triggered an international incident. Alina survived. The soldiers lived to see their families again. Maya's military career died that day. The court-martial was quiet, classified, and devastating. Officially, she received a reprimand for tactical deviation from assigned mission parameters. Unofficially, she was stripped of flight status, transferred to maintenance duty, and effectively blacklisted from any combat role. The military couldn't afford to court-martial one of their most effective pilots publicly, but they couldn't ignore the insubordination either. "You're a hell of a pilot, Rodriguez," the panel chair had told her privately after the hearing. "But we can't have officers making tactical decisions based on personal relationships. You understand that, right?" Maya understood. She also understood that she'd make the same choice again without hesitation. So she disappeared into the maintenance world, trading her pilot wings for wrenches and diagnostic equipment. Everyone assumed she'd lost her nerve, cracked under pressure, or simply wasn't cut out for the demanding world of air combat. The whispers followed her everywhere. Shame about Rodriguez. Heard she had some kind of breakdown. Lost her edge. I guess. At least she's useful turning wrenches. Such a waste. All that training for nothing. She heard every word, absorbed every dismissive comment, and never responded. Instead, she channeled her obsession with perfection into maintenance. Work that bordered on art. Every aircraft she touched received care that exceeded manufacturer specifications. She memorized technical manuals, learned systems integration that impressed even senior engineers, and developed an intuitive understanding of aircraft performance that made her invaluable to the maintenance squadron. But here's what nobody realized. Maya hadn't stopped being a pilot. She'd become something more dangerous, a pilot who understood every system, every capability, every limitation of the aircraft she worked on better than the people who designed them. She'd personally modified half the F-22s on base, installing performance enhancements that pushed capabilities beyond factory specifications. She knew the flight characteristics of each individual aircraft, could predict maintenance issues before they appeared, and had developed techniques for maximizing performance that existed nowhere in official manuals. Maya still studied tactical manuals during off hours. She monitored aviation frequencies, tracked deployment schedules, and maintained her flight currency through simulator time that she logged as systems familiarity training. She was ready for a call that might never come, preparing for missions that didn't officially exist. Tuesday morning started like every other day. Maya arrived at Hangar 7 at 0530, coffee in a battered thermos, tool belt hanging from her narrow waist. The morning briefing covered routine maintenance schedules, parts, inventory, and the usual reminders about safety protocols. F-22 Raptor tail number 05143 was scheduled for engine inspection, a complex procedure that would take most technicians the better part of a week. Maya completed it in 18 hours. She didn't just inspect the engines. She optimized them, fuel, injection timing adjusted by microseconds for maximum efficiency, afterburner staging refined for smoother power transitions, control system responses tuned to eliminate the minute delays that could mean the difference between life and death in air combat. When she finished, Raptor 05143 was performing beyond its original design specifications. "Rodriguez, Master Sergeant," Davis said, reviewing her work. This level of detail isn't necessary for routine maintenance. Sir, if this aircraft ever needs to perform at maximum capability, those details might save someone's life, Maya replied, cleaning her hands with industrial solvent that never quite removed all the grease. Davis studied the maintenance logs, noting performance improvements that would make any pilot grateful. You know something the rest of us don't? Maya looked at him directly for the first time in the conversation. I know that being ready isn't the same as being needed, but being needed without being ready is a tragedy. That afternoon, while Maya was calibrating avionics systems, Thompson approached with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he'd been working up courage for hours. Rodriguez, can I ask you something personal? Maya continued working, but nodded. My buddy at Nellis says there used to be a pilot called Phantom. Female F-22 driver, supposedly one of the best ever. You know anything about that? Maya's hands paused for just a moment before continuing their work. Heard stories, why? Just curious. They say she disappeared a few years back. Some kind of incident that got her grounded permanently. Thompson was fishing, clearly having heard rumors, but lacking details. People disappear from combat roles all the time, Maya said carefully. Medical issues, family problems, loss of security clearance. Could be anything. Yeah, but this pilot, supposedly she could make an F-22 do things that weren't in any manual. My buddy says she once took out 6 enemy aircraft in a single engagement without breaking a sweat. Maya finished her calibration and closed the access panel. Sounds like war stories getting bigger in the telling. Maybe, Thompson said, but he was studying her face with the intensity of someone beginning to connect dots. You know, you work on these F-22s like you know them personally. Like you understand how they think. Aircraft don't think, Thompson. They're machines. Complex machines that require understanding, but machines nonetheless. But as she walked away, Maya realized that someone was finally asking the right questions. 4 years of invisibility might be coming to an end, and she wasn't sure if that was good or bad. What she did know was that Raptor 05143 was now in perfect condition, ready for whatever mission might come its way. She had no way of knowing. That mission would arrive in less than 18 hours, and would require every skill she'd spent 4 years hiding. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The classified files in Colonel James Mitchell's office told a story that most people at Edwards would never believe. Sitting in his locked filing cabinet, marked with security classifications that required special clearance, just to read, was the complete service record of Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez. Not the sanitized version that appeared in her current personnel file, but the real story of Captain Maya Phantom Rodriguez, one of the most lethal F-22 pilots the Air Force had ever produced. Colonel Mitchell had been Maya's squadron commander during her combat deployment to Syria. He knew exactly who was wearing coveralls in Hangar 7, and it kept him awake at night. The transformation had been gradual, almost surgical in its precision. Maya Rodriguez hadn't just been demoted and transferred. She'd been systematically erased from the Air Force's official memory. Her combat decorations remained classified. Her mission reports were buried in archives that required presidential clearance to access. Even her call sign had been retroactively removed from squadron histories. But Mitchell remembered everything. He remembered the first time he'd seen Maya fly. It was during advanced combat training at Nellis Air Force Base, where the Air Force's most promising pilots learned to push the F-22 Raptor to its absolute limits. Maya had been one of only 3 female pilots in a class of 32, and the youngest by 4 years. The exercise was simple in concept, brutal in execution. 4-on-1 air combat simulation. 4 experienced aggressor pilots in F-16s versus 1 rookie in an F-22. The scenario was designed to teach humility, to show new pilots that superior aircraft meant nothing without superior tactics. Maya had destroyed all 4 aggressors in 11 minutes. Not defeated them. Destroyed them. The computer simulation registered 4 clean kills with weapon solutions, so precise that the debriefing instructors had to run the data 3 times to verify accuracy. She'd used the F-22's stealth capabilities, superior speed, and advanced sensor systems in combinations that weren't taught in any manual, flowing between defensive and offensive postures with an intuition that couldn't be trained. Rodriguez, the instructor had said after the simulation, studying readouts that showed performance metrics beyond anything they'd previously recorded. "Where did you learn to fly like that?" "My father, sir," Maya had replied simply. "He taught me that aircraft have personalities, and if you listen carefully enough, they'll tell you what they want to do." Miguel Rodriguez had been a legend in his own right. An F-16 pilot during the Gulf War, he'd returned home with stories that shaped Maya's understanding of air combat from childhood. He'd died in a training accident when Maya was 16, but not before passing on lessons about flying that went beyond anything taught in flight schools. "The aircraft wants to fight," he'd told her during countless hours at airshows and museums. "Your job isn't to force it to do what you want. Your job is to understand what it can do better than anyone else, then help it do exactly that." Those lessons had shaped Maya's approach to the F-22 Raptor. While other pilots fought against the aircraft's computer systems, Maya learned to work with them. Where others relied on manual control inputs, she developed an almost telepathic connection with the fighter's advanced flight systems. She didn't just fly F-22s. She thought like them. The results had been unprecedented. During her combat deployment to Syria, Maya's squadron had achieved air superiority in contested airspace that had been considered too dangerous for sustained operations. Her tactical innovations had been studied by Pentagon strategists and incorporated into training programs at the highest levels of classification. Colonel Mitchell pulled out a mission report dated 3 years, 4 months, and 12 days ago. The paper was stamped with security markings that made it more classified than most nuclear weapons. Documentation. Mission designation: Phantom Crown. Objective: establish air superiority over a heavily defended sector in northern Syria to enable special operations extraction. Enemy forces: estimated 12 to 15 advanced fighter aircraft, integrated air defense systems, mobile surface-to-air missile batteries. Maya had volunteered for the mission that everyone else considered suicidal. She'd gone in alone. The mission report, written in the dry language of military documentation, couldn't capture the artistry of what Maya had accomplished that day. Flying a single F-22 against overwhelming odds, she'd used stealth, speed, and tactics that redefined what was possible in air combat. She'd eliminated 7 enemy aircraft without being detected, suppressed air defense systems across a 40-square-mile area, and provided cover for the Special Operations Team to complete their extraction. 0 friendly casualties. Mission accomplished with surgical precision. The enemy pilots never knew what hit them. Maya had appeared on their radar screens for exactly the time required to fire, then vanished back into electronic invisibility. She'd used the F-22's advanced sensor systems to coordinate attacks from angles that shouldn't have been possible, leveraging stealth technology in ways that impressed even the engineers who designed it. But the mission that made her a legend was also the beginning of her downfall. Colonel Mitchell turned to the incident report that had ended Maya's flying career. The official documentation was carefully worded, describing a tactical deviation from assigned mission parameters that had resulted in successful completion of unauthorized objectives. Reading between the lines required understanding the politics of military command, structure, and the impossible choices faced by combat leaders. Maya's squadron had been flying air superiority patrol when intelligence reported that a special operations team was under attack. The team included Maya's sister Elena, a combat medic whose unit had been inserted to provide medical support for a classified operation. The attack was unexpected, overwhelming, and developing too rapidly for conventional response. Standard protocol required Maya to maintain her assigned patrol area and request authorization through proper channels for any mission changes. The authorization process would have taken 45 minutes minimum. The Special Operations team had maybe 10 minutes before being overrun. Maya had made the choice that defined her character. She'd chosen lives over protocol, breaking formation. Without authorization, she'd led her flight into a level attack that saved 37 American soldiers. The precision of her strikes had eliminated enemy positions while avoiding any friendly fire incidents. From a tactical perspective, it was a masterpiece of close air support executed under impossible conditions. From a command perspective, was insubordination that could have triggered an international incident. The court-martial had been a formality. Maya's record spoke for itself. Too valuable to discharge, too insubordinate to trust with continued combat authority. The compromise had been elegant and cruel. Transfer to maintenance duty. Classified security clearance maintained to prevent her from discussing her combat experience. And an official record that suggested mechanical aptitude rather than tactical genius. Colonel Mitchell closed the file and looked out his office window toward Hangar 7, where Maya was probably conducting maintenance that exceeded factory specifications. She was still there, still ready, still the most capable pilot on base despite wearing coveralls instead of a flight suit. The irony wasn't lost on him. In trying to punish her for choosing lives over orders, the Air Force had created something more dangerous than a combat pilot. A combat pilot who understood every system, every capability, every limitation of the aircraft better than the people who designed them. Maya had spent 4 years learning things that weren't taught in flight schools. She'd mastered maintenance procedures that gave her insights into aircraft performance that active pilots never developed. She'd studied technical manuals with the intensity of someone preparing for combat, memorizing specifications and capabilities that could mean the difference between life and death. More importantly, she'd never stopped thinking like a pilot. While her hands worked on hydraulic systems and avionics packages, her mind was analyzing tactical scenarios, evaluating threat assessments, and maintaining the mental skills that had made her legendary. Colonel Mitchell had watched her transformation with a mixture of admiration and concern. Maya Rodriguez hadn't been broken by her transfer to maintenance duty. She'd been refined by it. She'd become something the Air Force had never intended to create. A pilot who understood the aircraft so completely that she could push it beyond designed limitations. The question that kept him awake at night was simple. What would happen if Edwards Air Force Base ever needed that kind of capability again? He had no way of knowing that question would be answered in less than 12 hours, when unidentified aircraft would appear on radar screens, and the base's only operational F-22 would be sitting in Hangar 7 under Maya's care, but deep in his classified files. Colonel Mitchell had contingency plans that most people would consider impossible. Plans that assumed someday the Air Force might need the services of Captain Maya Phantom Rodriguez again. Regardless of what her personnel file said about her, current assignment. Plans that required a pilot who could do what everyone else said couldn't be done. As evening settled over Edwards Air Force Base, Maya was completing her shift in Hangar 7, unaware that her commanding officer was reviewing files that could change everything. She cleaned her tools with methodical precision, checked aircraft status reports one final time, and prepared to leave for another quiet evening off base. Tomorrow would bring routine maintenance schedules, parts inventory, and the ordinary duties of a staff sergeant in the maintenance squadron. She had no reason to expect anything different. She was wrong. The first indication that Wednesday would be different from every other day in Maya's 4-year exile came at 0347 hours, when the base-wide alert system activated with a sound she hadn't heard since her combat deployment days. Not the routine drill tone that everyone ignored, but the urgent, penetrating wail that meant immediate and credible threat to base security. Maya was in the base gym, finishing a workout that had become ritual during her years in maintenance. While other night shift personnel slept, she maintained the physical conditioning of a combat pilot, running scenarios in her mind, while her body went through exercises designed to maintain the reflexes and spatial awareness that air combat demanded. Alert cut through her thoughts like a blade. She was dressed and running toward the flight line within 2 minutes, muscle memory overriding 4 years of maintenance duty protocols. The base was transforming around her as security lights flooded runways and personnel emerged from buildings with the controlled urgency of people trained for exactly this scenario. The Base Defense Operations Center was chaos controlled by professionals who drilled for crisis management but never expected to use it during peacetime. Captain Sarah Chun was coordinating communications while Master Sergeant Rodriguez monitored radar displays that showed something impossible. 12 contacts, Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with disbelief. Bearing 270, altitude Angels 25, speed Mach 2.5 and climbing. No transponder codes, no radio contact, no flight plans filed with any civilian or military authority. Colonel Mitchell burst through the operations center doors, still buttoning his uniform jacket. "Talk to me, Chun. What are we looking at?" "Sir, we have 12 unidentified aircraft approaching restricted airspace. They're flying in formation, maintaining radio silence, and displaying flight characteristics consistent with advanced fighter aircraft." Captain Chun's training kept her voice steady, but everyone in the room could hear the underlying tension. "ETA to base perimeter? 18 minutes at current speed and heading, sir." Mitchell studied the radar display, watching 12 blips that represented either the most sophisticated training exercise he'd never been briefed on, or a legitimate threat to national security. Any word from NORAD? Could this be some kind of unannounced joint exercise? Negative, sir. NORAD confirms no scheduled military exercises in this sector. No friendly aircraft reported in the area. What about our defensive capabilities? The silence that followed was deafening. Master Sergeant Rodriguez cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Sir, the 27th Fighter Squadron is at red flag training exercises in Nevada. Won't be back for 72 hours. The 412th Test Wing has all aircraft grounded for scheduled maintenance, except ... Except what, Sergeant?" "Except for one F-22 in Hangar 7, sir. But that aircraft is officially down for engine inspection." Colonel Mitchell's expression didn't change, but everyone in the room who knew him recognized the slight tightening around his eyes that meant he was processing information at light speed. "Who's the assigned maintenance technician for that aircraft?" "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, sir. Maya Rodriguez." For a moment that stretched into eternity, Colonel Mitchell weighed options that ranged from impossible to unthinkable. The closest air support was 4 hours away. The unidentified aircraft would be in weapons range of Edwards Air Force Base in 15 minutes. Their only potentially operational fighter was under the care of a maintenance technician who happened to be the most gifted combat pilot he'd ever commanded. Maintenance technician who'd been stripped of flight status for the kind of tactical decision-making that might be exactly what the situation required. "Get me Rodriguez. Maya Rodriguez, now." Outside Hangar 7, Maya was conducting her own threat assessment. The alert had triggered protocols that were both familiar and strange. Familiar because she'd lived through them in combat zones. Strange because they were happening at a peacetime base in California. The organized chaos around her spoke of a real threat, not a drill dot. She was running pre-flight diagnostics on Raptor 05143 when Airman Thompson found her. "Rodriguez, Colonel Mitchell wants to see you in the operations center, right now." Maya looked up from the diagnostic panel, reading Thompson's expression with the same precision she applied to aircraft systems. Fear, excitement, confusion, and something else. A dawning recognition that maybe all those questions he'd been asking about the mysterious pilot called Phantom were about to be answered. "What's the status on this aircraft?" she asked, continuing her work despite the summons. "What? I don't know. You're the one who'd know that." "Why?" "Because in about 10 minutes, someone's going to ask me if this F-22 is mission capable, and I want to give them an accurate answer." Thompson stared at her, processing the implications of what she'd just said. "Rodriguez, what's going on? Why would anyone ask you about mission capability? You're maintenance, not flight operations." Maya finished her diagnostic check and began. A systems verification sequence that would normally take an hour but which she completed in 8 minutes. "Thompson, sometimes the line between maintenance and operations gets blurred, especially when there's only one operational aircraft on base, and people need to know what it can do. But you can't know that without a pilot." Maya looked at him directly for the first time in the conversation, and Thompson saw something in her eyes that made him take an involuntary step backward. It was the look of someone who'd made life-and-death decisions in situations where hesitation meant failure. "Get Colonel Mitchell. Tell him Raptor 05143 is fully mission-capable. Systems operating at 103% of design specifications. Full weapons load available and ready for immediate deployment." "Maya, you can't possibly know all that from maintenance checks." "I know because I built those systems to exceed specifications. I know because I've spent 4 years preparing this aircraft for a mission that everyone said would never come. And I know because in about 7 minutes, 12 unidentified fighter aircraft are going to be in weapons range of this base, and we're going to need every advantage we can get." Thompson's face went white. "How could you possibly know about the threat assessment? That information is classified." "Because," Maya said, pulling on her coveralls and grabbing equipment that looked suspiciously like flight gear rather than maintenance tools, "some things never change. Aircraft approaching a military installation without identification during peacetime means either the biggest training screw-up in Air Force history, or someone's about to start shooting. Either way, we need to be ready." The radio on Thompson's belt crackled with Colonel Mitchell's voice. "Rodriguez, get to the operations center immediately. We need to discuss the operational status of aircraft 05143. Maya was already walking toward the operations center, but she paused long enough to give Thompson instructions that sounded nothing like routine maintenance protocols. "Thompson, if anyone asks, that F-22 has been maintained to combat readiness standards for the past 6 months. All systems optimized, all weapon systems certified, all performance modifications tested and verified. And Thompson, yeah? If shooting starts, get everyone in the hangar away from the flight line and into the hardened shelters. This isn't going to be a training exercise." As Maya walked through the night air toward the operations center, she felt transformation happening inside her that had been building for 4 years. The careful camouflage of Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, maintenance technician, was falling away to reveal Captain Maya Phantom Rodriguez, combat pilot. She'd spent 4 years in exile, for years being ignored and underestimated, 4 years preparing for a moment that everyone said would never come. But deep down, she'd always known it would. Combat pilots don't retire from readiness. They just wait for the next mission. The 12 aircraft approaching Edwards Air Force Base were about to discover that their intelligence was incomplete. They'd planned for a base with no operational fighters, no immediate defensive capabilities, and no pilot qualified to challenge advanced aerial threats. They'd planned wrong. Maya checked her watch as she approached the operations center. 12 minutes until the unidentified aircraft reached weapons range. 12 minutes to convince her commanding officer to authorize the most irregular combat deployment in Air Force History: 12 minutes to transform from a maintenance technician back into the pilot who'd once been considered too dangerous for peacetime operations. The door to the operations center loomed ahead of her, and Maya realized that everything in her life had been leading to this moment. The combat missions that had made her legendary, the court-martial that had exiled her to maintenance duty, the 4 years of preparation that had kept her ready for a call that might never come. The call had come as she reached for the door handle. Maya Rodriguez made a decision that would change everything at Edwards Air Force Base. She was about to stop hiding who she really was, regardless of the consequences, because 12 unidentified aircraft were approaching restricted airspace. And America needed its best pilot in the air, not under it with a wrench in her hand. Maya entered the Base Defense Operations Center like she belonged there, her coveralls and grease-stained hands contrasting sharply with the crisp uniforms of flight operations personnel. But her bearing had changed during the walk from Hangar 7, shoulders back, eyes scanning tactical displays with the intensity of someone who'd spent years reading similar screens under combat conditions. That Colonel Mitchell looked up from a radar console showing 12 contacts now 14 minutes out from base perimeter. Rodriguez, tell me about aircraft 05143. Is it mission capable? Yes, sir. Fully operational, all systems optimized beyond factory specifications. Maya's voice carried none of the deference typically expected from maintenance personnel addressing senior officers. She spoke with the confidence of someone delivering a professional tactical assessment. Beyond factory specifications? Sir, I've spent 4 years modifying that aircraft's systems for enhanced performance. Engine efficiency increased by 12%. Radar signature reduced by an additional 15%. Beyond standard stealth capabilities. Weapons systems integration optimized for faster target acquisition and engagement. She paused, meeting his eyes directly. That F-22 is the most capable air superiority fighter currently on American soil. Captain Chun looked up from her communications station. Colonel, we're getting pressure from NORAD. They want to scramble fighters from Nellis, but response time is 3 hours 40 minutes minimum. Sir, Master Sergeant Rodriguez added from the radar station, the unidentified contacts have changed course. They're now heading directly for our primary runway complex. Current trajectory puts them over restricted airspace in 12 minutes. Colonel Mitchell studied the tactical display, weighing impossible options. Every protocol in the book called for evacuation and defensive posture until backup arrived. But every instinct developed through 30 years of military service told him that waiting meant accepting whatever the incoming aircraft intended to do to his base. Rodriguez, he said, turning back to Maya, I need a pilot qualification assessment for aircraft 05143. Who on base is certified to fly that aircraft? The question hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. Everyone in the operations center knew the answer. No one currently assigned to Edwards was qualified for F-22 operations. The aircraft was present only for maintenance and testing purposes. Maya looked around the room, reading faces that reflected the same grim calculation. Then she made a decision that would either save Edwards Air Force Base or end her military career permanently. Sir, I'm qualified for F-22 operations. The silence was deafening. Captain Chun stopped coordinating communications. Master Sergeant Rodriguez turned from his radar station. Even the radio chatter seemed to pause as if the universe was waiting for Colonel Mitchell's response. Rodriguez, you're a maintenance technician. Your personnel file shows no flight certification. My current personnel file, sir. Check my classified service record. Authorization level Delta 7 or higher. Maya's voice remained steady, but everyone in the room could hear the weight of classified information being revealed. File designation Phantom Crown, Syria deployment, classified air superiority operations. Colonel Mitchell's expression didn't change, But his hands moved toward a secure terminal with the efficiency of someone accessing information he'd reviewed many times before. His fingers entered security codes that opened files most people at Edwards didn't know existed. The room watched in stunned silence as Colonel Mitchell's face transformed from confusion to recognition to something approaching. "Oh, Jesus Christ," he whispered, scanning documents that contained Maya's real service record. "You're Captain Maya Rodriguez. Call sign Phantom. Former Captain Rodriguez, sir. Currently Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, maintenance technician, assigned to aircraft systems optimization." "Optimization," Mitchell repeated, suddenly understanding the full implications of what Maya had been doing for 4 years. "You've been preparing." "Yes, sir. Maintaining readiness for contingencies that standard protocols don't address." Captain Chun had been listening with growing amazement. "Sir, what are we talking about? Who is Phantom?" Mitchell looked at Maya, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded slightly. "Phantom is the pilot who holds the classified record for air-to-air combat effectiveness in F-22 operations. 137 combat missions, 0 friendly casualties. Tactics and techniques that are still studied at the highest levels of Air Force Command." He turned back to his terminal, reading details that made his earlier assessment seem conservative. "Rodriguez, according to this, you once engaged 15 enemy aircraft simultaneously and eliminated 12 of them without taking damage. Mission parameters were different then, sir. I had intelligence support, electronic warfare backup, and authorization to engage targets of opportunity." Maya paused, glancing at the radar display showing the approaching threats. "This situation requires different tactics." "Sir," Master Sergeant Rodriguez called from the radar station, his voice tight with urgency. "Contacts are now 11 minutes out. They've increased speed to Mach 2.8 and are descending to attack altitude." Colonel Mitchell faced the decision that would define his career and potentially determine the fate of everyone on Edwards Air Force Base. Authorize an unauthorized combat deployment by a pilot who'd been stripped of flight status for insubordination, or wait for backup that would arrive too late to matter. "Rodriguez, if I authorize this, you understand you're flying alone against 12 unidentified aircraft of unknown capability. No backup, no support, no electronic warfare assistance. Just you and an F-22 against whatever's coming. Sir, with respect, it won't be just me and an F-22. It'll be me and the most advanced air superiority fighter ever built, modified beyond original specifications, against aircraft that aren't expecting to face any resistance." Maya's voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who'd calculated odds that others would consider impossible. Their intelligence told them Edwards has no operational fighters. "They're wrong, but you haven't flown combat in 4 years." "I've flown combat simulations every week for 4 years, sir. Updated tactics, new threat assessments, advanced engagement protocols. I've studied every advancement in air combat technology and integrated them into my tactical planning." She gestured toward the radar display. "Those aircraft are following a standard penetration profile for attacking an undefended installation. They're not prepared for air-to-air engagement." Colonel Mitchell looked around the operations center, seeing faces that reflected the same impossible calculation. Wait for backup and hope the incoming aircraft were conducting some kind of elaborate training exercise, or authorize the most irregular combat deployment in peacetime Air Force history. "Sir," Captain Chun said quietly, "NORAD is reporting additional radar contacts. Whatever's happening here might not be an isolated incident. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. If Edwards was under attack, other installations might be facing similar threats. The incoming aircraft might be part of a larger operation designed to neutralize American air power before conventional responses could be organized." "Colonel," Maya said, her voice cutting through the uncertainty, "in 8 minutes, 12 unidentified Aircraft are going to be over this base. They're either conducting the most dangerous training exercise in military history, or they're here to do damage that will take years to repair. Either way, we need to be ready to respond. Mitchell stared at the classified files on his screen, seeing a career's worth of impossible missions, accomplished by the woman standing in front of him wearing coveralls and safety glasses. The same woman who'd spent 4 years maintaining aircraft to standards that exceeded factory specifications, preparing for a moment that everyone said would never come. Rodriguez, if I authorize this deployment, you understand that you're not just risking your life. You're risking the only operational fighter we have. If you're shot down, Edwards has no air defense capability until backup arrives. Sir, if I don't launch, Edwards has no air defense capability right now. Maya met his eyes with the directness of someone who'd made life-and-death decisions in situations where hesitation meant failure. Those aircraft aren't approaching for a courtesy visit. Colonel Mitchell closed the classified files and looked around the operations center one final time. At Captain Chun, coordinating communications with authorities who were too far away to help. At Master Sergeant Rodriguez, tracking contacts that represented either an unprecedented crisis or the beginning of something much worse. At the maintenance technician who just revealed herself to be one of the most capable combat pilots in Air Force history. Rodriguez, you're authorized for immediate deployment in aircraft. 5 to 143. Mission parameters. Establish air superiority over Edwards Air Force Base and neutralize any threats to base security. He paused, the weight of command decision settling on his shoulders. God help us all. Maya was already moving toward the door, but she paused long enough to deliver instructions that sounded nothing like maintenance protocols. Sir, recommend base-wide alert status Charlie. Ground all non-essential personnel. Medical teams on standby. And sir? Yes? Whatever happens in the next 20 minutes, that F-22 is coming home. As Maya disappeared into the night, running toward Hangar 7 and an aircraft that had been waiting 4 years for this moment, Colonel Mitchell realized he'd just authorized either the most brilliant tactical response in Edwards' history or the most catastrophic mistake of his career. In 6 minutes, they'd find out which. Maya burst through the doors of Hangar 7 with the intensity of someone for whom every second mattered. Airman Thompson was still standing by the F-22, looking bewildered by the base-wide alert and the sudden transformation of the maintenance technician he thought he knew. Thompson, move away from the aircraft, now. Maya's voice carried an authority that made him step backward without question. She was no longer requesting or suggesting. She was giving orders with the confidence of someone who'd commanded life-and-death situations before. Rodriguez, what's happening? The whole base is going crazy. And you're talking like you're about to. I'm about to do exactly what you think I'm about to do. Maya was already pulling on equipment that Thompson suddenly realized wasn't maintenance gear. The harness system was designed for high-G maneuvers. The helmet was fitted with heads-up display interfaces. The suit was flame-retardant flight gear, not coveralls. That F-22 is launching in 4 minutes. But you're not a pilot. You're maintenance. Maya paused in her preparations, looking at Thompson with something between sympathy and urgency. Thompson, everything you think you know about me is about to change. In 3 minutes, you're going to watch a maintenance technician climb into that cockpit. What you're actually seeing is Captain Maya Rodriguez returning to the aircraft she was born to fly. Thompson's face went white as pieces of a puzzle he'd been unconsciously assembling suddenly clicked into place. You're Phantom. The pilot one asked you about. You're her. I'm her. Maya was conducting a pre-flight inspection with speed and precision that bordered on supernatural. Her hands moved over control surfaces, engine intakes, and weapon systems with the familiarity of someone who'd performed this exact sequence hundreds of times in combat zones. And in 2 minutes, those 12 unidentified aircraft are going to discover that their intelligence was incomplete. She completed the external inspection in 90 seconds, checking systems that would normally require 15 minutes of careful examination. But Maya wasn't checking for problems. She was confirming modifications and enhancements that she'd personally installed over 4 years of preparation. The engine modifications that increased thrust by 12%, operational. The radar signature reductions that made an already stealthy aircraft nearly invisible, verified. The weapons systems integration that allowed faster target acquisition than factory specifications, ready. The flight control enhancements that pushed maneuverability beyond design limits. Online. Maya climbed into the cockpit with fluid motion that spoke of thousands of hours of muscle memory. The F-22 systems came alive around her like an extension of her nervous system, displays lighting up in patterns that would overwhelm most pilots, but which Maya read like a familiar language. "Thompson," she called down from the cockpit, "get on the radio to Colonel Mitchell. Tell him aircraft 05143 is initiating engine start sequence and will be ready for takeoff in 90 seconds. Maya, this is insane. You haven't flown in 4 years. I've flown every day for 4 years, she replied, beginning a startup sequence that typically took 8 minutes, but which she completed in 3. Just not where anyone could see me. The engine spooled up with a sound that Thompson had heard many times during maintenance operations, but never with the urgency and power that Maya was extracting from them. The F-22 Raptor was designed to be one of the most powerful aircraft ever built, but under Maya's control, it seemed to develop a personality that was both predatory and elegant. "Tower, this is Phantom requesting immediate takeoff clearance." Maya's voice came through the radio with the calm professionalism of someone who'd made similar calls in combat zones where hesitation meant death. "Phantom, Tower, you are cleared for immediate takeoff, runway 09, Godspeed." Maya taxied the F-22 from Hangar 7 to the runway with precision that made the aircraft look like it was floating rather than rolling. Thompson watched from the hangar door, finally understanding that he'd been working alongside a legend for months without knowing it. In the Base Defense Operations Center, Colonel Mitchell was coordinating communications with NORAD while monitoring Maya's progress on taxi cameras. "Contact bearing 265, 8 minutes to base perimeter," Master Sergeant Rodriguez reported. "Phantom is rolling for takeoff." "Sir," Captain Chun added, "we're getting reports from other installations. Vandenberg reports similar unidentified contacts. Peterson Air Force Base is tracking multiple unknowns. Whatever this is, it's coordinated." Colonel Mitchell felt the weight of command decisions that could affect national security. If this was indeed a coordinated attack on multiple Air Force installations, Maya's mission was no longer about defending Edwards. It was about proving that American air power could respond to threats that weren't supposed to exist. On runway 09, Maya pushed the F-22's throttles to military power and felt 4 years of preparation crystallize into pure kinetic energy. The aircraft accelerated with violence that pressed her into the ejection seat, afterburners lighting with twin columns of flame that turned night into day across the flight line. In 12 seconds, the F-22 went from stationary to airborne, climbing at an angle that defied conventional understanding of aircraft performance. Maya had modified the flight control software to allow maneuvers that Lockheed Martin's engineers would consider impossible, and she was using every enhancement to extract maximum performance from an aircraft that was already beyond anything else in the sky. "Phantom airborne," she reported, her voice steady despite pulling G-forces that would overwhelm most pilots. "Climbing to Angels 25, switching to combat air patrol frequency. Phantom, be advised you are cleared to engage any aircraft that violate restricted airspace. Rules of engagement: weapons free after positive identification of hostile intent." Maya leveled off at 25,000 feet and immediately began using sensor systems that she'd spent 4 years optimizing. The F-22's radar was already the most advanced air-to-air detection system ever deployed, but Maya's modifications allowed it to track targets at ranges that exceeded original design specifications. She found them immediately, 12 aircraft in tight formation, flying profiles that spoke of military training and hostile intent. They were maintaining radio silence, displaying no transponder codes, and approaching Edwards Air Force Base on a direct attack vector. More importantly, they were flying aircraft that Maya's enhanced sensors identified as advanced fighters, not civilian aircraft, not training aircraft, but combat-capable fighters that had no business being in American airspace without authorization. Tower, Phantom. I have 12 bandits bearing 268, Angels 22, approximately 40 miles northwest and closing. Aircraft type appears to be foreign military fighters, configuration unknown. Recommend immediate implementation of defense protocols. Phantom confirmed. You are authorized to intercept and identify. Use all necessary force to protect base security. Maya banked the F-22 toward the incoming formation, feeling the aircraft respond to her inputs with precision that bordered on telepathic. 4 years of modifications had created a fighter that was uniquely hers, faster, stealthier, and more maneuverable than any other F-22 in existence. As she closed the distance to the unknown aircraft, Maya's mind shifted into combat mode that she'd maintained through 4 years of exile. Threat assessment, tactical planning, engagement scenarios, all processing at the speed that had made her legendary among pilots who specialized in the impossible. The incoming aircraft had made a critical error in their planning. They'd assumed Edwards Air Force Base had no immediate air defense capability. They'd planned for attacking an undefended installation with overwhelming force and advanced aircraft. They hadn't planned for Maya Rodriguez. At 30 miles separation, Maya's enhanced sensors provided target identification that made her blood run cold. The approaching aircraft were indeed foreign military fighters, advanced designs that weren't supposed to exist, displaying capabilities that suggested technology transfers that would represent massive intelligence failures. Tower, Phantom. Positive identification of hostile aircraft. Foreign military fighters, unknown configuration, approaching restricted airspace with apparent hostile intent. Request permission to engage. Phantom, you are weapons-free. Defend the base. Maya armed. The F-22's weapons systems, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility that came with authorization to use lethal force. AIM-120 MRAM missiles for beyond visual range engagement. IM-9X Sidewinders for close-in combat. And if the situation deteriorated to close-range maneuvering, a 20mm cannon that she'd personally calibrated for maximum accuracy. At 20 miles separation, the lead aircraft in the hostile formation suddenly broke radio silence. American aircraft, you are interfering with authorized flight operations. Disengage immediately or face consequences. Maya's response was delivered with the calm professionalism that had made her legendary in combat zones where diplomacy was measured in microseconds. Unknown aircraft, you are violating restricted United States airspace without authorization. Reverse course immediately or you will be engaged and destroyed. American pilot, you are outnumbered 12-1. Withdraw while you still can. Maya checked her weapon systems one final time, confirmed target locks on the lead aircraft, and made the tactical decision that would define the next 20 minutes of air combat. Unknown aircraft, this is Phantom. You're not outnumbered. You're just flying the wrong aircraft in the wrong airspace against the wrong pilot. At 15 miles separation, Maya Rodriguez initiated the most important air combat engagement of her career, flying alone against overwhelming odds in defense of American territory. The fight for Edwards Air Force Base was about to begin. At 15 miles separation, Maya Rodriguez became something that hadn't existed for 4 years. A combat pilot with authorization to engage hostile aircraft in defense of American territory. The transformation was instantaneous and complete, from maintenance technician to apex predator in the span of a heartbeat. Phantom, you have 12 bandits bearing 265. Altitude Angels 21, speed 500 knots closing. They're spreading into attack formation. The voice from Edwards' radar control was tight with tension. Recommend you disengage and wait for backup. Negative control. Backup is 3 hours out. These aircraft will be over base facilities in 6 minutes. Maya's response was delivered with the calm precision of someone calculating odds that others would consider suicidal. Phantom is engaging. What happened next would be studied in air combat academies for decades to come. Maya's first advantage was invisibility. The F-22 stealth technology, enhanced by her personal modifications, made her aircraft nearly undetectable to conventional radar systems. While the hostile formation could see Edwards Air Force Base on their screens, they had no idea that one of the world's most advanced fighters was already positioning for attack. Her second advantage was 4 years of obsessive preparation. While other pilots had been flying routine training missions, Maya had been studying every advancement in air combat technology, analyzing engagement patterns from conflicts around the world and developing tactics that existed nowhere in official Air Force manuals. Her third advantage was the aircraft itself. F-22 Raptor 05143 wasn't just the most advanced fighter in the Air Force inventory. It was a unique platform that Maya had personally optimized beyond factory specifications. Faster, more maneuverable, and deadlier than any other aircraft in existence. At 12-mile separation, Maya achieved target lock on the lead hostile aircraft and fired her first AIM-12 OMRAAM missile. The AIM-120, Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, is designed to engage targets at distances where visual identification is impossible. Guided by active radar homing, it can track and destroy aircraft that never see the attack coming. Maya's first missile covered 12 miles in 8 seconds, striking the lead hostile aircraft with precision that turned sophisticated military hardware into expanding debris cloud. Splash 1, Maya reported, already maneuvering for her second engagement. 11 hostiles remaining. The effect on the hostile formation was immediate and dramatic. Aircraft that had been flying in tight formation suddenly scattered in all directions, pilots realizing they were under attack by an aircraft they couldn't see on their radar screens. Radio chatter erupted in languages that Maya's intelligence training allowed her to identify as Russian and Chinese. Confirmation that this was indeed a coordinated, foreign military operation. Maya's enhanced sensors tracked every aircraft as they attempted to escape her engagement envelope. But she'd spent 4 years studying formation tactics and defensive maneuvers, and she'd anticipated exactly this response. Banking hard left, she positioned herself to engage 2 aircraft that were trying to flank Edwards from the north. 2 more AMRAAM missiles launched in rapid succession, guided by radar systems that Maya had calibrated for maximum accuracy. Both missiles found their targets, removing 2 more threats from the tactical equation. Splash 2, Splash 3. 9 hostiles remaining, attempting to scatter and regroup. But Maya wasn't finished. Using speed and stealth capabilities that the hostile pilots couldn't match, she positioned herself above the remaining formation and began using tactics that combined technological superiority with pilot skill that bordered on supernatural. The 4th kill came from an angle that shouldn't have been possible. Maya dove from 30,000 feet, used the F-22's thrust vectoring to execute a maneuver that violated several laws of physics, and engaged a hostile aircraft with an AIM-9X Sidewinder missile that tracked its target through a 90-degree turn before impact. Splash 4, 8 hostiles remaining, attempting to engage. The hostile formation was now fully aware they were facing a single American fighter pilot of extraordinary capability, but their tactical options were limited. They could attempt to overwhelm her with numbers, retreat to regroup, or try to complete their original mission against Edwards Air Force Base. They chose to fight. What followed was air combat that redefined what was possible when superior aircraft met superior pilot skills. Maya found herself engaged in simultaneous battles with multiple aircraft, using the F-22's advanced flight controls to execute maneuvers that would have destroyed lesser aircraft and killed less capable pilots. The fifth and sixth kills came during a high-G turning fight that pushed both aircraft and pilot to the absolute limits of performance. Maya pulled 8 Gs while maintaining target tracking that allowed her to engage 2 aircraft within 3 seconds of each other. Her modifications to the F-22's flight control system allowed maneuvers that Lockheed Martin's engineers had never envisioned, turning the aircraft into an extension of her will rather than a machine she was controlling. Splash 5, splash 6. 6 hostiles remaining, attempting to disengage. In the Edwards Operations Center, personnel were watching radar displays that showed something impossible: a single American aircraft systematically destroying a coordinated attack by 12 advanced fighters. Colonel Mitchell was coordinating with NORAD while monitoring Maya's progress with a mixture of pride and disbelief. "Sir," Captain Chun reported. NORAD confirmed similar engagements at 3 other installations, but none of them had immediate air response capability. Phantom is the only pilot currently engaged. How is she doing this? Master Sergeant Rodriguez asked, watching radar blips disappear one by one. 12 against 1 should be impossible odds, even for an F-22. Because, Colonel Mitchell said, studying classified performance reports that he'd reviewed hundreds of times over 4 years, Maya Rodriguez isn't just flying an F-22, she's flying the F-22 that she personally designed for exactly this kind of engagement. Back in the air, Maya was demonstrating why she'd been considered too dangerous for peacetime operations. The 7th kill came during a vertical climb that reached 45,000 feet, where she used the thin air and her aircraft's superior performance to engage a hostile that thought altitude would provide safety. The 8th kill was pure artistry. Maya allowed 2 aircraft to position themselves for what they thought was a coordinated attack, then used the F-22's stealth capabilities to disappear from their radar screens. When she reappeared, she was behind both aircraft with missile locks that ended both threats simultaneously. Splash 7, splash 8, 4 hostiles remaining, attempting to retreat. But Maya had studied the tactical situation before engagement, and she'd anticipated this moment. The surviving aircraft were attempting to retreat along vectors that would take them over populated areas before reaching international airspace. Allowing them to escape meant accepting that foreign military aircraft had violated American territory and might return with better intelligence about American defensive capabilities. Maya made the tactical decision that defined her character. No hostile aircraft would leave American airspace with information that could be used against her country. The 9th kill came during a high-speed chase that reached Mach 2.1, testing both aircraft against performance limits that most pilots never approached. Maya's modifications to the F-22's engine systems allowed her to maintain pursuit speeds that gradually closed the distance to the retreating hostile. When she achieved missile lock at maximum range, the AN-12OM re-aim proved its effectiveness. Once again, the 10th and 11th kills required Maya to split her attention between 2 aircraft, attempting to escape in different directions. Using sensor systems that she'd personally integrated into the F-22's avionics package, she maintained target locks on both aircraft while maneuvering to engagement positions that allowed simultaneous missile launches. Splash 9, splash 10. Splash 11. 1 hostile remaining, attempting to retreat northwest. The final aircraft was piloted by someone with exceptional skill and an aircraft with performance capabilities that nearly matched the F-22. The engagement that followed was a masterclass in air combat maneuvering, with both pilots using every advantage their aircraft could provide. Maya and the hostile pilot engaged in a turning fight that covered 50 miles of airspace and reached altitudes from 500 feet above the desert floor to 38,000 feet. Each pilot was looking for the microscopic advantage that would allow a kill shot while avoiding the same fate. The decisive moment came when Maya used a tactic that she developed during her classified combat deployments but had never shared with Air Force training programs. Using the F-22's thrust vectoring and her deep understanding of aerodynamics, she executed a maneuver that appeared to violate the laws of physics, a 90-degree direction change at Mach 1.8 that positioned her directly behind the hostile aircraft with perfect missile firing solution. Splash 12. All hostile aircraft destroyed. Phantom returning to base. The radio silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds, as if everyone at Edwards Air Force Base was processing what they just witnessed. Then Colonel Mitchell's voice cut through the static with words that would become legendary in Air Force history. Phantom, Edwards Control, outstanding work. You just saved the base and proved that one pilot in the right aircraft can still change everything. As Maya banked toward Edwards for landing, she realized she just accomplished something that would redefine how the Air Force thought about air combat, pilot training, and the capabilities of properly motivated personnel. She'd also proven that 4 years of exile hadn't diminished her skills. It had refined them into something beyond what anyone had imagined possible. Maintenance technician who'd taken off 23 minutes earlier was landing as the pilot who just executed the most successful single-aircraft air defense mission in modern Air Force history. Maya was 3 minutes out from Edwards Air Force Base when the encrypted communication from NORAD changed everything she thought she understood about the morning's engagement. Phantom, this is NORAD command. Be advised, we have developing situations at 7 additional military installations. The aircraft you engaged were part of a coordinated penetration of U.S. airspace. We need immediate redeployment to Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado. How copy? Maya checked her fuel status, weapons inventory, and aircraft systems while processing the implications of what she'd just heard. The 12 aircraft she'd destroyed weren't an isolated attack on Edwards. They were part of a larger operation targeting multiple American military installations simultaneously. No RD command, Phantom. Copies. Current status. Fuel at 68%. 6 AIM-120 missiles remaining. 2 AIM-9X missiles remaining. Aircraft systems nominal. What's the situation at Peterson? Phantom, Peterson is under attack by 18 hostiles. Repeat, 1-8. Hostile aircraft. Their defensive fighters were caught on the ground during the initial assault. Base facilities are taking damage, and we have personnel casualties. You are the closest available air asset. Maya felt the familiar weight of impossible tactical decisions. Edwards was secure, but Peterson Air Force Base, home to NORAD headquarters, and critical national defense coordination systems, was underactive, attacked by a force 50% larger than what she'd just defeated. Her aircraft was running low on fuel and missiles, but she was the only American fighter currently airborne with combat capability. NORAD Command, what's my backup situation? Any other fighters available for support? Negative, Phantom. All other available aircraft are minimum 40 minutes out. Peterson needs immediate assistance, or we're looking at the loss of critical national defense infrastructure. Colonel Mitchell's voice cut through the military communications frequency. Phantom, Edwards Control, that's an impossible mission. 18 aircraft, reduced fuel and weapons, no backup. I can't authorize that deployment. Maya banked toward the northeast. already calculating flight time to Peterson Air Force Base and the tactical challenges of engaging a larger force with limited resources. What she was considering violated every principle of rational military planning, but rational military planning hadn't anticipated a coordinated foreign attack on American soil. Edwards Control, Phantom. With all due respect, sir, those 18 aircraft aren't going to wait for backup to arrive. Peterson Air Force Base is 47 minutes of flight time from my current position. If I don't engage immediately, NORAD, headquarters could be destroyed before any other American fighter reaches the area. Maya. Colonel Mitchell's voice carried the weight of command decisions that could determine the fate of critical national infrastructure. You just engaged 12 aircraft. Your aircraft is running low on fuel, you have limited missiles, and you're talking about taking on 18 hostiles alone. That's not heroism, that's suicide. Maya checked her navigation systems, confirming course and distance to Peterson Air Force Base, 47 minutes at maximum cruise speed. Fuel consumption calculated to leave her approximately 15% reserve upon arrival. Enough for 30 minutes of air combat before requiring immediate landing or in-flight refueling. Sir, 18 aircraft attacking NORAD headquarters isn't a tactical problem. It's a strategic catastrophe. If Peterson falls, we lose coordination, capability for defending the entire continental United States. Maya's voice carried the calm certainty of someone who'd calculated odds that others would consider impossible. Someone has to respond immediately, and I'm the only option available. Phantom, this is General Patricia Morrison, NORAD Command. The voice that came through Maya's radio belonged to one of the highest-ranking officers in the American military. I'm authorizing immediate deployment to Peterson Air Force Base. Mission parameters: engage and destroy all hostile aircraft threatening the installation. Rules of engagement: weapons free, maximum force authorized. Maya pushed the F-22's throttles to military power, feeling the aircraft accelerate toward Peterson Air Force Base with the urgency of someone racing against time and odds. Behind her, Edwards Air Force Base was secure because of her intervention. Ahead of her lay the most challenging air combat mission of her career, engaging 18 hostile aircraft with limited fuel and weapons in defense of America's most critical military command center. An ORD command, Phantom is en route to Peterson. ETA 42 minutes. Request tactical briefing on hostile aircraft composition and current engagement status. Phantom, Peterson reports the 18 hostiles are advanced fighters, similar configuration to the aircraft you engaged at Edwards. They're conducting systematic attacks on command facilities, communication arrays, and personnel areas. Base defensive systems have been suppressed, and ground personnel are in shelters. Maya absorbed the tactical information while monitoring her aircraft's performance. The F-22 was operating flawlessly, but she was pushing systems that had been in continuous operation for over an hour. Engine temperatures were elevated, but within acceptable parameters. Fuel consumption was higher than optimal, but manageable for the mission profile. More importantly, she was about to test modifications and capabilities that she'd never used in actual combat. The engagement at Edwards had been challenging but conventional, beyond visual range missile attacks followed by close-in maneuvering combat. What awaited her at Peterson would require tactics and techniques that existed nowhere in official Air Force training manuals. Peterson Control, this is Phantom, inbound from Edwards with ETA 38 minutes. Request current tactical situation and any specific target priorities. Phantom, Peterson Control, current situation is critical. 18 hostiles are conducting coordinated attacks on multiple facilities. They've damaged our primary communication array and are targeting the NORD command center. We need immediate air support to prevent catastrophic loss of national defense capabilities. Maya reached Peterson Air Force Base. Airspace with fuel at 22% and weapon status that would have sent any rational pilot back to base for resupply. But rationality was a luxury that America couldn't afford when foreign military aircraft were attacking the nerve center of continental air defense. The tactical situation she encountered was worse than the briefings had indicated. The 18 hostile aircraft weren't just attacking Peterson. They were conducting a systematic dismantling of America's air defense coordination capabilities. Communication towers lay in ruins. Command facilities showed evidence of precision strikes, and smoke columns marked successful attacks on critical infrastructure. But Maya noticed something that changed her entire tactical approach. The hostile aircraft were operating in a pattern that suggested they were following a specific mission timeline. They weren't just attacking randomly. They were methodically destroying predetermined targets in a sequence that would maximize damage to American defensive capabilities, which meant they were vulnerable to someone who could disrupt their carefully planned operation. Maya armed her remaining weapons systems and began using tactics that combined everything she'd learned during 4 years of exile with technologies that she'd personally integrated into her aircraft. The F-22 stealth capabilities, enhanced by her modifications, allowed her to position for attacks that the hostile pilots couldn't anticipate or counter. Her first engagement eliminated 2 aircraft that were conducting attack runs on the NORAD command center. Using her remaining AIM-120 missiles with precision that bordered on supernatural, she removed both threats before they could complete their bombing runs. Splash 13. Splash 14. 16 hostiles remaining, adjusting tactics. But Maya quickly realized that long-range missile engagements wouldn't be sufficient to neutralize 18 aircraft before her fuel situation became critical. She needed to use tactics that would allow her to engage multiple targets rapidly while conserving both fuel and ammunition. What she did next would become the subject of classified studies for decades to come. Using the F-22's thrust vectoring capabilities and her deep understanding of aerodynamics, Maya began engaging multiple aircraft simultaneously through maneuvering patterns that shouldn't have been possible with conventional physics. The 5th, 10th, and 16th kills came during a vertical engagement that reached 50,000 feet, where Maya used the thin atmosphere and her aircraft's superior performance to engage 2 hostiles with her remaining IM-9X missiles. But with her missiles expended, Maya faced the ultimate test of pilot skill, engaging 12 remaining hostile aircraft using only her 20mm cannon and flight characteristics that pushed the F-22 beyond anything its designers had ever envisioned. Peterson control, Phantom, all missiles expended. Engaging remaining hostiles with cannon. This is going to get interesting. What happened in the next 18 minutes would redefine how military aviation experts understood the limits of aircraft performance and pilot capability. Maya Rodriguez was about to prove that in the hands of someone with sufficient skill and preparation, a single fighter aircraft could accomplish missions that entire squadrons would consider impossible. The battle for NORAD headquarters was about to reach its climax, and Maya was running on fumes, determination, and 4 years of preparation for a moment that everyone had said would never come. With her missiles expended and fuel gauge showing 14%, Maya Rodriguez was about to demonstrate why she'd spent 4 years in exile preparing for the impossible. 12 hostile aircraft remained over Peterson Air Force Base, systematically destroying America's air defense nerve center, and she had only her 20mm cannon and pilot skills that bordered on supernatural. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, the most extraordinary display of air combat maneuvering in recorded history. Maya's first cannon kill came during a head-on engagement that violated every principle of safe flying. Racing toward a hostile aircraft at a combined speed exceeding Mach 3, she used the F-22's thrust vectoring to execute a last-second displacement that allowed her to rake the enemy fighter with cannon fire while avoiding collision by mere feet. The hostile aircraft disintegrated in a fireball that Maya flew through without hesitation. Splash 17. 11 hostiles remaining. The enemy pilots had watched Maya destroy 5 of their aircraft with missiles, but seeing her transition to cannon combat with the same lethal precision triggered panic in their formation. They scattered in all directions, abandoning their systematic attack plan to focus on the single American fighter that was systematically dismantling their entire operation. Maya used their confusion against them. Banking into a climb that reached 60,000 feet, she positioned herself above the scattered formation and began using gravity and advanced aerodynamics to engage multiple targets in rapid succession. The 18th kill came during a vertical dive that reached Mach 2.3. Maya dove from altitude like a bird of prey, used the F-22's flight controls to execute micro-adjustments that kept her cannon aligned with a fleeing hostile, and delivered a burst of 20mm rounds that severed the enemy aircraft's wing at the root. Splash 18. 10 hostiles remaining, attempting to regroup. But Maya wasn't finished. Using tactics that combined every lesson from her combat deployments with innovations developed during 4 years of theoretical study, she began engaging the remaining aircraft with maneuvers that pushed both pilot and machine beyond designed limitations. The 19th and 20th kills came during a turning fight that covered 30 miles of airspace in 4 minutes. Maya used the F-22's superior thrust-to-weight ratio to maintain energy advantage while positioning for cannon shots that required split-second timing and precision that most pilots couldn't achieve with missiles, much less guns. Peterson control. Phantom, 8 hostiles remaining. They're attempting to complete their mission against the command center. I need to end this quickly. Maya's fuel situation was becoming critical. 8% remaining meant she had perhaps 10 minutes of combat maneuvering before requiring immediate landing. But the hostile aircraft were regrouping for a final assault on NORAD headquarters, and allowing them to succeed would compromise America's ability to defend against future attacks. She made the tactical decision that defined her legacy. Instead of conserving fuel for landing, she would use every drop to ensure mission success. What followed was the most intense 8 minutes of air combat ever recorded. Maya engaged 8 aircraft simultaneously, using the F-22's advanced flight systems and her own superhuman piloting skills to maintain target tracking and weapons effectiveness, while maneuvering in 3 dimensions at speeds that tested the structural limits of her aircraft. The 21st kill required Maya to fly inverted at treetop level, using ground effect aerodynamics to maintain lift while engaging a hostile that thought terrain would provide protection. Her cannon burst was delivered while flying upside down at 400 feet above the Colorado Plains, striking the enemy aircraft with precision that defied rational explanation. The 22nd and 23rd kills came during a vertical engagement where Maya climbed directly into the path of 2 attacking aircraft, used thrust vectoring to rotate her fighter in ways that Lockheed Martin's engineers had never envisioned, and delivered cannon fire that eliminated both threats in a span of 3 seconds. Splash 21, 22, 23. 5 hostiles remaining, fuel critical. In the Peterson Operations Center, personnel were watching displays that showed something impossible: a single American pilot engaging multiple advanced fighters with cannon fire and achieving kill ratios that shouldn't have been possible with any weapon system. "Sir," the Peterson operations officer reported to General Morrison, "Phantom has eliminated 7 aircraft with cannon fire alone. Current engagement continues, but she's reporting critical fuel status." "How is she doing this?" General Morrison asked, studying tactical displays that showed Maya's aircraft maneuvering in patterns that seemed to violate physics. Even with an F-22, this level of performance shouldn't be possible. The answer came from Maya herself, transmitted over open frequency as she engaged the remaining hostile aircraft with fuel gauges showing 5%. Peterson Control Phantom. 4 years ago, I was grounded for choosing lives over orders. I spent every day since then preparing for the moment when America would need someone to do what everyone said couldn't be done. Today is that moment. The 24th kill was pure artistry. Maya allowed a hostile aircraft to position behind her in what appeared to be a perfect attack position, then used the F-22's thrust vectoring to execute a maneuver that military aviation experts would later describe as controlled falling with style. She rotated her aircraft 180 degrees while maintaining forward momentum, putting her cannon directly on target for an engagement that lasted less than 2 seconds. The 25th kill required Maya to engage an aircraft that was attempting to escape toward civilian population centers. Racing after the fleeing hostile at maximum afterburner, she pushed her fuel consumption beyond sustainable levels to achieve the speed necessary for intercept. The cannon engagement occurred over downtown Colorado Springs, with Maya delivering precision fire that destroyed the hostile aircraft while avoiding any damage to civilian areas below. Splash 25-26. 2 hostiles remaining, fuel at 2%. Maya's final engagements were conducted with fuel levels that should have forced immediate landing. But she'd calculated that allowing even one hostile aircraft to escape meant accepting intelligence compromise that could endanger future American operations. The 27th kill was achieved through pure pilot skill and aircraft knowledge that existed nowhere in technical manuals. With her engines beginning to flame out from fuel starvation, Maya used the F-22's momentum and flight characteristics to execute an unpowered attack that positioned her cannon for a shot that eliminated the penultimate hostile aircraft. The 28th and final kill was accomplished with her engines completely shut down. Gliding at 30,000 feet with the precision of someone who understood aerodynamics better than the engineers who designed her aircraft. The last hostile aircraft, thinking the American fighter was disabled, positioned for what it thought would be an easy kill. Instead, it flew directly into Maya's cannon fire, ending the most successful single-pilot air defense mission in military history. Splash 28. All hostile aircraft destroyed. Phantom is dead stick, attempting emergency landing. Maya executed a powerless landing at Peterson Air Force Base that combined 4 years of theoretical study with piloting skills that bordered on supernatural. The F-22 touched down with fuel tanks completely empty, engines silent, but structural integrity intact and pilot unharmed. As Maya climbed out of the cockpit, she was met by General Morrison, Colonel Mitchell, who'd flown to Peterson during the engagement, and a collection of military personnel who'd just witnessed the impossible become routine. Major Rodriguez, General Morrison said, using a rank that Maya hadn't held for 4 years, "You just saved NORAD headquarters and probably prevented a catastrophic compromise of American air defense systems. But more than that, you've proven that individual capability, properly prepared and deployed, can still determine the outcome of strategic engagements." "Ma'am, with respect, I'm Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, maintenance technician." "Not anymore." General Morrison opened a folder containing documents that would rewrite Maya's military career. "By executive authority of the Secretary of the Air Force, you're hereby promoted to Lieutenant Colonel and assigned as commanding officer of the newly established 1st Special Air Operations Squadron. Your mission: develop and implement tactics for scenarios that conventional military doctrine considers impossible." Colonel Mitchell stepped forward, his expression showing a mixture of pride and vindication. "Maya, 4 years ago, I filed classified recommendations that you be assigned to special operations rather than maintenance duty. Those recommendations were rejected because your tactical decision-making was considered too independent for conventional command structure. And now, sir? Now we realize that independence wasn't a flaw in your character. It was preparation for missions that require someone who can make decisions that everyone else says are impossible. 6 months later, Lieutenant Colonel Maya Rodriguez stood in Hangar 7 at Edwards Air Force Base, but her role had changed completely. Instead of maintaining aircraft for other pilots, she was training a select group of aviators in techniques that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with advanced fighter aircraft. The F-22 that sat in the hangar wasn't just aircraft 05143. It was the prototype for a new generation of air superiority fighters that incorporated every modification and enhancement Maya had developed during her years in exile. The aircraft that had once been her responsibility as a maintenance technician was now her command as the leader of America's most elite air combat unit. Colonel Rodriguez, Captain Lisa Santos said, reviewing flight training schedules that included maneuvers most pilots had never imagined. The new pilots are asking when they'll be ready for missions like Peterson. Maya looked out at the flight line where 12 F-22 sat ready for deployment, each one modified to her specifications and maintained to standards that exceeded anything the Air Force had previously achieved. Santos, they'll be ready when they understand that being the best pilot in the world isn't about following procedures that someone else wrote. It's about being prepared to do what everyone says can't be done when the people who matter most are depending on you to succeed. The maintenance technician who'd been dismissed and underestimated had become the commanding officer of the most elite air combat unit in the world. But more importantly, Maya Rodriguez had proven that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply be ready for the moment, when being ready matters more than anything else. The ghost who'd once been called Phantom was now training the next generation of pilots who would defend American skies. And somewhere in a classified filing cabinet, her personnel file reflected a truth that took 4 years to prove. Some people are exactly where they're supposed to be, even when everyone else thinks they belong somewhere different. The woman they'd called just maintenance crew had saved America's air defense infrastructure and redefined what was possible when individual capability met impossible circumstances. The F-22 Raptor program would never be the same. Neither would the U.S. Air Force, and neither would anyone who understood that sometimes the most powerful weapon in America's arsenal isn't advanced technology. It's exceptional people who refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.